You can own more than 3 t-shirts and still be a sustainable queen. Hello everybody and welcome back to my channel. My name is Gita Mary and I am so excited for this video because I get to talk about art today, and I so rarely get to talk about art, or I very rarely allow myself to talk about art. Today's video is going to be about minimalism, and we're going to take a look at how it originated, what it means, what the impact is, etc, etc. And this is one of the first videos that I've made that is actually in correspondence or in alignment with my master's and what I did at uni, so that's pretty darn exciting. Now, I don't see myself as a minimalist, as my outfit is perhaps a witness to, even though I see myself as an environmentalist. And perhaps you can tell from the context that I definitely think it's possible to be one without the other. Sometimes I get questions about why I'm not pursuing minimalism in order to become truly zero waste or truly sustainable. I've also gotten weird passive-aggressive DMs from people where I've been linked to other accounts with captions like, "This is what truly zero waste actually looks like." And although that stuff really doesn't bother me all that lot, I thought it could be really interesting to dive into some of the aspects of minimalism and how it originated and what it means and what the impact of it can be, not only in terms of the lifestyle and sustainability, but also in terms of culture and design and art. Also, small disclaimer, this is not to say that anyone who likes simplicity or minimalism is less valid or their preferences are less valid. That's not what I'm here to say at all. If that's how you roll that way. Now, where did minimalism come from? Minimalism covers a set of aesthetic principles and has many different meanings depending on the context it's applied in, with less is more being one of minimalism's most famous mantras. Overall, the most frequent fields of application for minimalism covers art, fashion, design, architecture, literature, and lifestyle. Lifestyle, of course, being a very loaded term in and of itself. Already in the 1800s, philosophies surrounding simplicity had taken form, with the works of, for instance, Ralph Waldo Emerson and Henry David Thoreau. However, the term minimalism did not appear until much later. In the 1920s and 30s, minimalism was associated with the Bauhaus art movement. This art and design was defined by its disassociation from emotion and history, and its fascination with geometry and function. In the 1950s and 60s, the term minimalism started gaining momentum with artists like Frank Stella, Donald Judd, and Agnes Martin. Now, today, the minimalist movement is globally available not only through art or design, but also through blogs or online content or TV shows, general web shops and products and stores and brands. And minimalist design is by far one of the most easily accessible types of products that we can find both in fashion and in furniture today. One of the reasons why is because it's often advertised as versatile or essential or timeless, and thus very valued by consumers. But why did minimalism happen? Like with any other cultural wave or movement, minimalism challenges and counters a pre-established status quo. It responds to something that's already here. The rise of minimalism in the 60s, for instance, was a clear rejection of everything that pop art taught us about colors and abundance and brands and recognizable patterns and logos and other types of cultural references, all of which minimalism removes itself from. Now, in terms of minimalism and its impact, I think it's important to talk about the erasure of culture through minimalist design. Adolf Loos, in his work Ornament and Crime from 1931, compares excessive intricate design or ornamentation to that of being less human. I will not subscribe to the argument that ornament increases the pleasure of life of a cultivated person, or the argument which covers itself with the words, but if the ornament is beautiful, to me and to all the cultivated people, ornament does not increase the pleasures of life. He also goes on to describe how simplicity or the absence of ornamentation makes a person or a culture more godly or sophisticated and closer to heaven. Soon the streets of the city will glow like the white walls of Zion, the holy city, the capital of heaven. It is then that fulfillment will have come. But was this just some weirdo writing weird stuff in his basement? Loos and his works have actually been a very essential part of design and architecture circles for decades. Loos compares in his works excessive ornamentation to something of a person that is more criminal or inhuman, and a person who deliberately chooses to refuse such ornamentation as a higher form of being or a higher level of sophistication. Now, I hope you can all see how this is deeply problematic. The notion of minimalism, especially in architecture, but actually all throughout its applications, is rooted in the desire for cultural erasure and fascism. Let's think about this for a second. Every culture on the planet has used ornamentation and decoration as a form of expression and identification. Humans have since the dawn of time used intricate designs to show other people who they are. We have expressed ourselves through intricate and ornamental design and art all throughout our history, and every culture has an aspect of this. In reality, it's actually part of our history, our heritage, and our essence as humans. We have used, and many cultures still do, ornamentation to show other people who we are and to communicate to other people where we come from. For instance, black hairstyles is an example of this, but there are thousands of other examples just like it, because every culture has it or has had it. So it's interesting, or perhaps more worrying, that so much of it have been erased by fascists and colonizers. Many forces in Western culture has played a big part in deeming certain cultural forms of expression for primitive or unsightly or unsophisticated or outdated, while the absolute absence of any cultural identity is deemed the perfect aesthetic. Many people of color still have trouble practicing their cultural heritage through art or fashion. This is actually one of the reasons why white supremacy has had a chance to spread throughout the West. Because Western European cultures have had their own traditions and patterns and styles and aesthetic and intricate designs and ways of individual expression, but white supremacy and such movements have erased a lot of these cultures and a lot of this significant design, because it's so dependent on people not identifying with their own specific culture, but rather as this homogeneous whiteness. And we can see this development through design and art in history. In art, minimalism seeks to remove the individuality of the artist and their emotions from the art. It aims to reject personal ideas and emotions, and on a similar note, the effect is the same with white supremacy. Individuality is removed so that the movement can expand, and yikes! So what does this have to do with the minimalistic lifestyle? Today, the art of living a minimalistic lifestyle is a product that's being sold to consumers constantly, all over the world. The minimalist lifestyle and the people who profit from its popularity have a tendency of practicing a holier-than-thou vibe, which is very rooted in privilege. Minimalism is essentially about making do with less, even when you have the option of living in abundance. Which sounds good, sounds sustainable, and it is! To some extent, because many products that are advertised to suit the minimalistic lifestyle are ridiculously expensive and extravagant. Take a look at, for instance, Marie Kondo's web shop and its $45 copper plates or a $98 gemstone water bottle. As such, corporate minimalism almost has a feeling of a capitalistic scheme. By the way, this was not supposed to be a gotcha moment. That's not what I wanted to do. I simply just wanted to illustrate how detrimental it can be to try and conform an aesthetic into a lifestyle, and how equally detrimental it can be to assume a product's sustainability based on the aesthetic movement it fits into. Minimalism is not always sustainable because a key element of the lifestyle is focused on getting rid of things, and while you can donate or give away rather than throw away, it's a problem that a lifestyle pushes us to get rid of stuff the second we don't think we need them. This means that many super sustainable actions won't be in alignment with minimalism, like reusing packaging over and over, or saving gift wrapping for next year, or reusing glass jars from the supermarket, or regrowing veggies in your kitchen, and many other things that are perfectly good and sustainable to do. They won't necessarily fit into the minimalist lifestyle or the perfect ideal minimalist home that we see being advertised to us constantly. And in our search to achieve this minimalist ideal, we might end up removing a lot of options for sustainable living from our lives. So, what's the alternative? Now, as we talked about, every time there is a movement or a wave of anything in culture, there exists a counter movement, or a counter movement will magically appear. And you would think that the counter movement to minimalism would be overconsumption or materialism. But in fact, those are not exactly opposites, because that would mean that everything that is not minimalist is overconsumption, and that's just not the case. Because it is not the aesthetic of a product that shows how sustainable it is. It's the sourcing of the material, how people were paid, if the product and the production of the product supported a local community. It's about farming practices and every step of the supply chain. The sustainability is not necessarily shown in the final result. A thing can be really simplistic looking and awful for the environment, and a thing can be really extravagant looking and perhaps be super sustainable. It's not about what it looks like. Supply chain. While owning 3 t-shirts, for instance, is way more sustainable than going out every week and buying a new fast fashion t-shirt, but that does not mean that only owning 3 t-shirts is by default more sustainable than thrifting, or by getting things that other people don't need anymore, or using clothes swapping, or buying from local craftspeople or local garment production. So the counter movement to minimalism is maximalism. Who would have thunk? While minimalist aesthetic draws from clean lines, monochrome color schemes, and the less is more mentality, maximalism draws on abundant color usage, a mix of patterns and materials and textures, and generally all across the board applies a more is more mentality. I live like this, for instance. I've covered my walls in paintings that I've collected from artists and thrift shops during the past 15 years. I propagate plants in my windowsills to grow new ones. I love vintage rugs. And none of my chairs, glasses, plates, forks, or food storage containers match each other. I find most of my furniture secondhand and try to use the things in new ways. I also dumpster dive and take in discarded furniture. I prefer living at a place that constantly reflects my personality. I love my old knickknacks, I love books and art. I love the idea of color-coordinated and stocked bookshelves. I am also quite the collector. I collect vintage tableware, I collect old taxidermy, and I have more clothes than the average influencer minimalist. Because I like it this way. I also have my legs completely covered in tattoos, including a tattoo that says horror vacui, which literally translates to the fear of empty spaces. But it's often expected of me that I try to pursue minimalism because I want to live more sustainably, or because I am living more sustainably. And I see that whenever I show people online my home and how I live, or whenever people come and visit me for the first time. When you're pursuing sustainability, it's often expected that you also pursue minimalism, because we so often assume that they go hand in hand, because the overall goal is to reduce our impact. And a really neat way to reduce impact is by buying less stuff, which I also think is, yes, good. But you don't have to fit into this sleek, simple little box in order to do that. There is no blueprint for what a perfect environmentalist looks like, or what kind of aesthetics they prefer. Sustainability is so beyond an aesthetic. It's about reusing things we already have and thinking in circular solutions. I know tons of people find a lot of comfort and pleasure in minimalism, and that's just a-okay. That's completely fine. For me personally, I would suffocate instantly. If I had to live in a minimalist home, I would use all my energy, constantly trying to suppress my expression of individuality. So it's very lucky that I don't have to. Of course, you can borrow certain elements from the minimalist lifestyle. Perhaps you want to draw minimalistic elements into your wardrobe and how you put clothes together, while not wanting for that to be reflected in the way that you decorate your home, or vice versa. You don't have to go all the way to, you know, only owning 30 items. But if you want to challenge yourself and only own 30 items, that's also completely fine if you want to do that. Now, I live in Denmark, where minimalist, Scandinavian and Nordic design is always the default options, and in a way where we are so proud of it as well. So I can say without hesitation that I'm sick of it. I think it's boring. Minimalistic design is often advertised as timeless, to make consumers think that no matter what, it will be a good investment. But what's timeless to me might not be timeless to you, because there's no universal blueprint for what people will like for many years to come. I overall don't subscribe to the idea of trends, because that also assumes that a thing can become untrendy or outdated. And I think that's inherently a fault within our consumer system, because it forces us to buy new things, even though the thing that we already had was completely functioning. But now the look of it and the feel of it isn't up to par anymore. And I don't think in an ideal world that could be possible. Like, I don't think, that's not something, it doesn't happen here. Yeah, okay. Things can, by definition, not become untrendy if you like them and if you love them and if you've chosen them authentically based on your preferences. So you can rock that green, pink, yellow, purple kitchen, because it doesn't inherently make it unsustainable because it has more color. This was my thoughts on minimalism and sustainability. I hope that you liked this video. If you did, you can leave it a thumbs up, and you can leave me a comment down below and tell me your thoughts on this. I think this is a really interesting subject to discuss. And generally, when we see movements within sustainability, I think it's just as important to assess them and reflect upon them and be able to critique them as we are ready to critique those movements that happen outside sustainability. Thank you so much for watching. Have an amazing day. Please remember to subscribe to this channel if you want to see more of stuff like this and other kinds of things. It's all good, fam. Take really good care of yourselves. Until next time. Bye. Thank you so much for watching this video, and also a special thank you to my Patreon supporters. You guys help me create green zero waste content and I love you guys. You can find the links to my social media accounts down below and the link to my Patreon on this screen. Bye!